All right, you know what time it is. It is time for tonight's roundtable. So we're going to bring in KCTV5's Jared Kohler, Neil Jones, who's out at Arrowhead, and former Chiefs linebacker Desmond Moses to break down Kansas City's AFC Championship game loss. Desmond, we're going to kick things off with you tonight. You were in the Chiefs locker room after a heartbreaking playoff loss to New England. How was the mood then, and how might that be an indicator of how the Chiefs players are feeling tonight?
Oh, it's disheartening, Danny. These guys are heartbroken. As a player, obviously, they expected to win. The city expected you to win. So there's a little bit of disappointment, feeling like you failed your city, your team. But tomorrow, they'll have the black trash bags out. It gets even worse. But tonight, they should hold their heads high because Kansas City played their heart out. It wasn't the ideal finish, but these guys went up against a very good team in Cincinnati, and the future is still bright for these guys.
I mean, and you have to relish in everything that they've been able to accomplish, the 3-4 start, the 8 straight wins, getting to an AFC title game, and now they can kind of look back on that and say, okay, you know, this season wasn't necessarily a failure, even though Patrick Mahomes in his post-game press conference said, look, anything short of the Super Bowl is a failure for us. It's not a successful season. They accomplished a lot, and the future is still very bright. So, Jared, how do you sum up today's game?
Well, Danny, I appreciate that positivity, but talking about today, as Desmond said, it is simply a heartbreaking. Of all the playoff heartbreaks this city has gone through, Neil, feel free to disagree, but this is a new level of heartbreak. It is unbelievable how quickly this team and Patrick Mahomes went from playing perfect football, in total control for almost the entire first half, to an unfathomable collapse. I did not recognize the team and quarterback I was seeing in the second half and in overtime. It is incredibly unfortunate because it is such a missed opportunity. However, this is still a great team. There is absolutely no reason to think Kansas City won't be back in this game next year. So spare me those hot takes. The future can still be bright, Danny, despite how dark today may feel. But for today, the word is pure heartbreak.
And I mean, it's so true because that's exactly how we all feel today. In this moment, you're just sick. I tweeted out, I am sick at the way this game ended. We were on the polar opposite side of this in the divisional round, how you felt like, oh man, this is over. And then pure elation and excitement because the Chiefs were able to come back and win it in overtime on a coin toss. We thought that the Kansas City Chiefs had it this time around because they won the coin toss again. But then Patrick Mahomes throws an interception in overtime, and like you said, it's a completely different offense than we saw during the first half, and we even saw during the divisional round. So heartbreak, I think, is the perfect word to describe tonight, and just kind of heavy. I think Chiefs Kingdom is heavy, but they also know that there is a bright future to look forward to. Neil, what are your thoughts on this game tonight?
Well, my thoughts on the game was that it was a terrible game. They were the better team, and they led in both of these games by at least 14 points. In today's game, they're up 21-3 or whatever. It looked like going into halftime that they might blow this team out. Instead, for the second straight time, they lose to them because they get beaten in the second half. This time, turnovers did them in just like they did earlier in the year. So the game itself, to me, was just miserable. It was a terrible way to end the season. But let's don't let the end of the year overwhelm what was a tremendous year. They win another division championship. They make another improbable run to being able to host the AFC championship game again, and they had a lead in that game. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and some of the offensive linemen that they brought in, the receivers Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, they are the kind of offense that's going to make repeated runs towards the Super Bowl. But it's still it's a great season, but a very disappointing end to that season.
It's a tale of two halves. You have a really exciting first half and then a very devastating second half in which the Chiefs only score 3 points and then end up forcing overtime. And Cincinnati comes back and defies all odds. It feels a lot like Week 17 in that they were able to overcome that 11-point halftime deficit and create something pretty much out of nothing. But is there one or two things maybe that you take away from this game that really defined the end to their season, or maybe defined how you're going to think of certain players or even a unit moving forward, Desmond?
It was the turnover battle. Kansas City lost this turnover battle, and I think in turn it cost them the game. Their offensive drive ended with an interception, obviously off of a tip ball. It's disheartening. You know, you don't want to see a team, especially with a nation. Kansas City feels like they're a better team, but turnovers can limit and crush anybody. And I think it did today for Kansas City. Just one too many. Joe Burrow, those guys took care of the ball a little bit better. The stats were almost identical. We're talking about two good football teams that played at a very high level. There were some ups, some downs as the season has given us, but that's one thing that stands out to me.
Jared, when you look back at this game, what are you going to remember?
Well, Danny, the tough pill for me to swallow is that the Chiefs lost this game mostly because of Patrick Mahomes. And I don't think I've ever said that before, especially in a big game. He's never disappointed in a big game. Now, the Chiefs also would not be in this game without Patrick Mahomes. He is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Best quarterback in Chiefs history and on his way to being a Hall of Famer, okay? So I'm not downing Patrick Mahomes' past or future, but the present is Patrick Mahomes did not play well in the second half, and it cost his team in a major way. This, for the first time, I thought Patrick Mahomes was human today. Because even if you look at the Super Bowl loss blowout, I thought he played pretty well last year, all things considered. But the Chiefs easily could have won this game if they just had better quarterback play at the end of the game. But there was a number of mistakes, some costly, some not. There was his fumble near the end of regulation almost cost him, and it didn't. Thankfully, Harrison Butker made the field goal, forcing it to overtime. You win the coin toss. I had every expectation that the Chiefs were going to win this game until they didn't. And that is a hard pill to swallow, especially coming off a week where they only had 13 seconds left. I thought that game was over, but Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs taught all of Chiefs Kingdom to believe. You only need 13 seconds. And then to follow that up with such a disappointing performance, don't take that for negativity going forward, but it's just hard to believe. I really didn't believe what I was watching.
I'm not sure I can sum it up any better than that. That was phenomenal and a very, very good point, Jared. Neil, what maybe was the one thing or a couple things that stuck out to you?
Well, it's hard to believe that the Chiefs went on this run. The only team that was able to beat them over about the last 12 weeks of the season were the Bengals. And in both of those games, Joe Burrow, who only had 6 games experience in the NFL coming into this season, outplayed Patrick Mahomes in both of these games. But guys, the thing that really shocked me, and I think the things that may have, the turnovers cost him, but their inability to get to Burrow. They chased him around. They forced him out of the pocket. They forced him to throw away. They forced him to throw some bad passes. But this is a guy that was sacked 9 times last week by the Tennessee Titans and pressured 19 more times. I expected this Chiefs defensive front to dominate the line of scrimmage and really get after him, and that was really disappointing. And I think we can agree that when the team has struggled this year defensively, it's primarily been because the defensive front was not able to command the line of scrimmage and get pressure on the quarterback consistently. That's something they're going to have to deal with. They brought in a guy that really made a difference in Ingram in the midseason. They need to get somebody who can come up and show up and be a star for them in the pass rush, because that's one thing that's been missing consistently over the last 3 or 4 years.
And what's crazy is that Ingram did show up tonight. You know, he had the sack at a crucial moment, and he also had the batted pass at a very crucial time. And, you know, Twitter was blowing up like, yeah, you know, this guy for a 6th round pick, you know, he's showing up during the postseason and doing great things. But you need more from the other guys around him, too. You need more from Chris Jones. You need more from Jaron Reed. You need more from Frank Clark. You don't need the offsides on a number 55 in an AFC title game, right?
Oof,
so, maybe too soon. Sorry. But what are the expectations now moving forward? How can we look towards what's next, Desmond?
Not a thing has changed. You're talking about a team that still has Patrick Mahomes, still has Tyreek Hill, still has Kelsey. These are top-tier weapons, and as long as these guys are in this offense and out there healthy, able to make plays, I don't have a doubt in my mind that Kansas City should be repeat contenders. They just have to improve on those pieces that we talked about. Defensively, even at the cornerback position, getting guys that can really cover up top-tier wide receivers, but also getting a book-in pass rusher that can put pressure on week in and week out, and we know what to expect from this defense, because right now we know what to expect from this offense, and it's almost pure excellence.
So, Jared, what do you think we should expect next year?
I absolutely think Chiefs fans should be confident that Kansas City can compete for an AFC championship next year because of this young core. Neil has talked about the salary cap, but I think that's where you make some tough decisions, like cutting longtime guys like Anthony Hitchens and Frank Clark, and suddenly your salary cap situation is looking a lot better to where you can pay Tyrann Mathieu, you can pay Charvarius Ward and Orlando Brown because you've hit on your draft picks who are cheap. Look at some of this team's young core. 3 rookies, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. They're all cheap. Then you look at guys like L'Jarius Sneed, Willie Gay, Juan Thornhill. all young guys on rookie contracts. When you have that young core, that's when I think you can afford to pay guys like Joe Thuney last year, Orlando Brown next year, who's coming off that rookie contract. So I think the foundation of this team can stay intact. And even if you lose a guy or two that is a key contributor, when you have number 15, who is the best quarterback in the National Football League on a overall basis, when you have a future Hall of Fame tight end, the greatest tight end who has ever walked this earth in Travis Kelce, when you have a future Hall of Famer in Tyreek Hill, you are going to have a chance to win every single football game, regular season, and playoffs. Does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl next year? As we saw today, it is any given Sunday. In 60 minutes of football, it's a cruel game. It's not like a 7-game series in the NBA or in Major League Baseball. It all comes down to one game, and if you don't have your best shot, your season will end. But if you look at the odds and you look at this team as a whole, I think the future is very bright.
Danny, that reminds me a lot of my old coach, the late, great Kevin Green. He used to tell us, hey, there's a small window of success. We got to take advantage. Right now, we had a guy by the name of Aaron Rodgers who was just coming off a Super Bowl. They haven't been back near a Super Bowl since. So I hope this is not the case for Kansas City.
4 straight AFC title games. I think that's all you got to say. This team is still very successful. There are so many other teams in the National Football League that would absolutely kill to be in this situation. And so, Chiefs fans, even though it's a tough night, relish in it right now, because next year there's a lot of things to be optimistic about, especially when you've got number 15 and a pair of future Hall of Famers as